let's assume Havdalah on the calendar is over. Let's say Shabbos is over 6:30. I'll make
okay, good.
And let's assume that's the earliest time you can make Havdalah.
Yes.
And then at 7 o'clock you do Malacha, but you didn't make Havdalah. Is that your question?
Yes.
Yes. You do not violate any biblical. You definitely are a Machal Shabbos.
Oh, you're Machal Shabbos?
No, you're not Machal Shabbos. Shabbos is over. You might be Mavatil or not Mavatil, but at least you haven't done it yet. But you violated the Asay of not making Havdalah.
Okay.
But you can't do Havdalah, you can't do Malacha before Havdalah. It doesn't mean, in conversely, if you made Havdalah at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you do Malacha at 3, and you have violated Shabbos. So Havdalah isn't,
okay.
In fact, the question is, and it's the question, how long can Havdalah go? In other words, what's the statute of limitation? Let's say I didn't make Havdalah Saturday night. Mm-hmm. How long?
Tuesday evening.
Right. So, and the same thing. There's there are two Havdalahs. There's a Havdalah we make in davening at Tachan Antano, Motzai Shabbos. That's the Havdalah in Tefillah. And there's Havdalah we make. Well, some hear it in shul, some go home and make it, but Havdalah al Hayayin. So actually, there are two different takanas. Actually, in fact, the Gemara talks about in Brachas how originally there was only a Havdalah in Tefillah. Before we became wealthy and affluent and could afford to make Havdalah and wine, so there was a time in history there was no Havdalah al Yayin, and in fact that's the Ramban Shita. When Tisha B'Av falls out on Saturday night, so the different opinions about what we do for Havdalah that year.
Yes.
So our meaning is we wait until Sunday and make it. But the Ramban says there is no Havdalah. Because why? Because since everyone on Tisha B'Av quotes the pasuk in Eicha will all have the status of being an ani, so I should say there's no Havdalah al Yayin, I should say. So therefore that year, you just Havdalah b'tefillah, and there is no Havdalah, because it's only a rabbinical institution, and obviously on Tisha B'Av the rabbis never said to make similar to the Magen Avram, who says his proof that the Magen Avram's opinion that all year round you fulfill your mitzvah of kiddush with words alone. You don't need wine. What's his proof? His proof is when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos. The same way and it's still Friday night, so we still have an obligation to make kiddush. So the same way we fulfill our obligation to make kiddush Friday night, that shows it works all year round. So the Ramban is something similar by Tisha B'Av. So that's one, and they basically say, again, a discussion on it, but Havdalah you make in Tefillah, or even if you don't make it in Tefillah, assuming a woman's obligated in Havdalah, and even if not, there's no harm, she should say, Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'cho. In other words, that usually takes away the Isser Malacha, so to speak.
Yes.
Even though so not that you violated the rights of Shabbos is over, but you violated the minhag of not doing malacha, and probably a din d'Rabbanan of not doing malacha before you make Havdalah. You don't violate a deraisa of Shabbos. I'm answering your question. If a person did malacha before they made Havdalah, they violated a d'Rabbanan, probably a rabbinical enactment that one should not do any malacha before they make Havdalah, but not that you desecrate Shabbos, because Shabbos is over.
Okay, let's go to the other end. Thank you. Let's go to the other end. If I forget about Kiddush, if I make Shabbos early, because I have in mind I'm accepting Shabbos, or I say Mizmor Shir or whatever the Baruch, then I make it early, well before sunset. Then I do a malacha. I'm not. It's not Chilul Shabbos because it's not Shabbos yet. Objectively, in the sky. So
right. So that's probably more of an issue in terms of once you after Plag HaMincha, or the earliest time. Let's say someone wants to accept Shabbos 10 a.m. in the morning, that doesn't work. Depending on the day, the earliest time you can take Shabbos in is Plag HaMincha, which is assuming a 6 to 6 day would be 4:45, an hour and a. So assuming you bring in Shabbos 4:45, 4:46, and you did malacha, so on a certain level, and if you accepted Shabbos, so in a certain sense you are a machal Shabbos, but not this. You're not chayev skila. No, you're not. You're definitely not the same level. Even though Tosefes Shabbos might be biblical, because it's still not. It's still not the same as Shabbos proper. But even though you are in a certain sense personally machalish because you accepted Shabbos.
Yes.
So once you accepted Shabbos, you can't do malacha.
But I'm over at the Raisa.
That's whether you are. You could be over at the Raisa, but you're not chayev ski. You're not.
Okay.
It's not this. It's
Yes.
It's worse than doing malacha after Havdalah, because Havdalah, it's just a din d'Rabbanan. Even if Havdalah is daraisa, but they didn't make it an issa daraisa to do malacha before.
Right.
Here it might be here you could be done with an issa daraisa of chilul Shabbos,
yes.
but it's not the same.
Yes.
And also, I guess it depends on how that gets into a topic of when we say Tosefes Shabbos. What does it mean?
Yes.
Is it Shabbos or Chol Davar, or just for doing some mitzvahs to make kiddush, to do certain mitzvahs, but not really for issa malacha? That would depend on that issue, but that's more of a problem. And we see that it's not objective because the halach is, let's say I took Shabbos in early and I need something has to be done. I could go to another Jew who hasn't accepted Shabbos and he could do it for me. So
yes.
We see it's not an objective thing. That's why, so it's a relative, so it's not the same. So perhaps it could be, it's not a definite deraisa, it all depends on how you learn, but perhaps deraisa or durabanan, but it's definitely not something, that's worse, because once you accepted Shabbos, so if we assume you accepted Shabbos or Chol Davar, then you are a Machal Shabbos. So it'd be now with the onish of,
yes,
you wouldn't be Chayav Misa for it, because, right, you wouldn't have the, you might bring a carbon for the others, but you wouldn't be liable to the skila, the strict penalty of doing it on Shabbos. Even if you accept Shabbos early, there is a difference between Shabbos proper and now work on the other end. If you normally keep Shabbos at 2 hours after Shabbos, and you don't keep it out, it's not the same as if you did it in that case.
Thank you.
Right. So there's a statute of limitations how early you could bring in Shabbos. There's a statute of limitations how late you could keep Shabbos. And in addition, there's a statute of limitations how long you can make Havdalah for. So there's Havdalah we make in davening, that's so you could do malachas. If you want to drive home and make Havdalah for the family, that's the minhag that people do. They make the Hatachan Antano in Shmoneh Esrei, then they drive home and make Havdalah. And then there's another Havdalah we make Aliyah, that's a Heter Achila. That gives you permission to eat. That's strictly speaking, but not because you violate Havdalah, you shouldn't be, anytime you have an obligation to do a mitzvah, you shouldn't eat until you do the mitzvah. So it's a general halacha, and let's say a person doesn't have wine at home, and he's not getting wine until Tuesday. Does that mean he can't eat until Tuesday? So no. So obviously, on the normal scenario, if you have the wine in front of you and you can make Havdalah in front of you, then you have to do it right away. But if the fact that for some reason there's a shortage of grape juice or wine and it's coming in tomorrow, you don't have to fast you don't have to fast until Havdalah. So the din lechatchilas. So that's Hatachan Antano. That's the Havdalah in Tefillah. And there's Havdalah al Yayin. So let's say a person, they had a big chulin Shabbos morning, afternoon, and they slept through. They knew it was probably daven mincha before they went to sleep. There was an early mincha, and they woke up the next morning. They woke up for shacharis. So we know the halacha is, as the Gemara tells us, that there's halacha of tashlumin. There's halacha of makeup. So as a general, nothing to do with Shabbos. If a person misses shacharis this morning, you make it up at mincha by davening to Shemona. Again, this is all b'shogeg. This is all unintentional. You can't intentionally do it, or else there is no makeup. But if you unintentionally slept in or missed it, so then you make it up the next tefillah, mincha to Ma'ariv to shacharis. So what happens if someone wakes up this morning, he hasn't daven Ma'ariv yet, so you can't daven Ma'ariv, it's the morning. So he's going to daven 2 Shmoneh Esreis. He'll daven shacharis, then he'll wait the time it takes to walk Dalet Amos, and he'll daven another one to make up for Ma'ariv. Which one does he put Hatachan Antano in? Does he put Hatachan Antano in his first Shmoneh Esrei or his second?
Second.
Why?
Because if he does it in the first, and then he says it in the second, he's violating.
You think because he can't do malacha because he didn't hear Havdalah yet?
No, because if he says it in the first one, and then he doesn't say it in the second one, he's liable to have omitted it, and then he has to repeat it. I just studied this in breakfast. So. 24
26b you're referring to, but that's talking about, right, 26b, that where the Gemara is talking about it, but the Gemara is saying something a little different, but that's the kasha. The kasha is, the Gemara says, if you forget Atachan Antanu in Shemon Esrei, and you remember afterwards, so let's say you daven last night, and after you finish Shemon Esrei, you remember you left out Havdalah in Tefillah. Do you have to repeat? No. However, the Gemara has the kasha, but the Gemara says, let's say you forgot, you forgot to daven mincha, or you forget, or you're sleeping and you woke up for Ma'ariv, you're davening 2 Shemon Esreis, and you instead of doing Havdalah in the first Shemon Esrei, you put it in the second one. So the Gemara said you have to daven a third time. That's the implication, is that if you forget Havdalah in Shemon, you do have to repeat. So how do you reconcile?
I'm sorry, I don't see the big. I mean, you could just say Baruch HaMavdil and.
No, that wasn't the kasha. The kasha is you're trying to give an eitzah. I'm not looking for eitzah. I'm dealing with a specific problem here. The Gemara says that if you forget Havdalah in Shemon Esrei, let's say you don't have to go back. So the Gemara asks, is that true? What happened? One forgot to daven Mincha Shabbos. Now he's davening 2 Shemon Esreis. So instead of saying Atachan in the first Shemon Esrei, he said it in the second. So the Gemara says you got to daven a third one.
With the Atachan
yeah, a third one. So therefore the question is, so that implies that if you don't say Atachan Antanu, you do have to repeat. So we have an apparent contradiction. Do you have to go back and repeat Shemon Esrei if you forget Atachan Antanu? The Gemara leaves it a tiyufta or a tekel, one, and the Gemara doesn't. The Gemara leaves it unresolved. But the Rishonim answer the question. That is because really the answer is you don't have to go back. If you forget Havdalah in Shemon Esrei, the halacha is you don't repeat. So why would I have to repeat a third time? That's a totally different halacha, because when should you have put Havdalah? In which Shemon Esrei? Your first one, because why? Your first one you're davening Ma'ariv, and your second Shemon Esrei is make up for min. When are you making it up? It's the second one. So by you putting Havdalah in the second one, you are showing that you wanted your second Shemon Esrei to count for Ma'ariv, and you daven Mincha first. And the halacha is if you daven the tashlumin before the chova, then you have to repeat. It's nothing to do with missing Havdalah. It has to do with the fact that you daven the makeup before the obligation. So getting back, so which one should you do? So really, I would have said you should say Havdalah in the second Shemon Esrei, because it's the opposite of this case. This case is, when am I davening Ma'ariv? Is my second Shemon Esrei, because Shacharis I'm davening now. So where should I would think to put Havdalah? In the second one. In fact, that's what the Mishnah Berurah and some poskim do. But Rav Chaim said, no, you should put it in the first Shemon Esrei. Why? Because what's the Nekudas HaMachlokas? Whether if you didn't daven last night, you're davening 2 Shemon Esrei Shacharis. Should it go in the first Shemon Esrei of Shacharis, which should be Shacharis versus Ma'ariv? And the issue is why do we say Havdalah in Motzai Shabbos? Is it a din? Is it something inherent about the Shemon Esrei of Motzai Shabbos? There's a connection to Havdalah. That's what the Mishnah Berurah seems to learn. If it's true, then you'd say it in the second Shemon Esrei. Rav Chaim says no. It's a din. It's the first Shemon Esrei you do b'chol. It's nothing to do with 99% of the time. The first Shemon Esrei during the week will be Saturday night, but there's no connection between Havdalah and the most. Rav Chaim says it's the first Tfilas Chol, so therefore, in a case where you didn't daven last night, you have to put it in the first Shacharis.